guys, what's up? KillJoy Jake here, and instead of having friends, I have horror movies. Today we are going to be pitting the remake versus the original of Suspiria, the Dario Argento classic or the Luca Guadagnino new vision. Which film will win? Now before I get into that, I'm gonna need you guys to like this video and subscribe for more horror content. Alright, now let's get into it. And let me take off this freaking hat. Get over here! Now before I start talking about the good, the bad, and the ugly, let's talk a little bit about these movies. Suspiria is a 1977 Italian supernatural horror film directed by Dario Argento, who co-wrote the screenplay with Daria Nicolodi. A funny parallel between him and John Carpenter is that they were both dating a girl at the time who had a lot of money that produced their movies. So as you can see, behind every big horror director, there is a woman who's helping him. That doesn't get any credit due to misogyny. So big shout out to Deborah Hill and Daria Nicolodi, who are kind of really important unseen faces in the horror genre. Partially based on the Thomas D. Quincy's 1845 essay Suspiria de Profundis, the film stars Jessica Harper as an American ballet student who transfers to a prestigious dance academy in Germany, but realizes after a series of brutal murders that the academy is a front for a supernatural conspiracy. The film is considered one of the best from Dario Argento, who is the master of Italian horror cinema. It is also the first of the trilogy Argento refers to as the Three Mothers trilogy, which also comprises of Inferno from 1980 and The Mother of Tears from 2007. Now I've never seen those two films, but I've heard that they're pretty good, so I gotta check them out. The only other Dario Argento film I've seen is Deep Red, and that was really good. That one focuses more on the Italian crime-centered horror, where this one is more supernatural. James Wan also has a new movie coming out called Malignant. It was supposed to come out in March of this year, but ended up obviously being delayed due to blah, 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 blah. Did you hear that? That was me being censored. I guess it's supposed to pay an homage to Dario Argento's giallo style, which I should have talked about earlier. This film is a giallo film, or giallo film. Giannino. I don't know, I can't pronounce things. But literally it means yellow in Italian. It's just referring to the horror subgenre that kind of focuses on like mystery paperback books, which a lot of these films are based off of. And the 2018 remake, directed by Luca Guadagnino, was inspired by the 1977 film, but is very different than Dario Argento's vision. It stars Dakota Johnson as an American woman who enrolls at a prestigious dance academy in Berlin, just like the original, but in this movie, Tilda Swinton plays like 3 different characters. Also, speaking of Tilda Swinton, I've been told that I kind of look like her. I remember in high school I was made fun of a lot for looking like Tilda Swinton. I don't really see the resemblance, but maybe you do. Roast me in the comments section, go ahead. The film had been in the works since 2008 and was actually supposed to be directed by David Gordon Green at one point, but the project was unfortunately canceled due to financial conflicts. But then in September of 2015, Guadagnino confirmed his plans to direct, describing his vision as an homage to the original rather than a straightforward remake. Which, let me tell you, it's so different than the original, it's kind of hard to call it a remake. But enough of that, let's get into the good. Starting off with Suspiria from 1977, the film is beautifully shot. Even if you're not the biggest fan of Dario Argento's weird nightmarish style, I'm not gonna lie, I don't love it, but I think it's interesting. The cinematography is just so different and wildly artistic in his films. You gotta respect it even if you don't love it. The colors in this film make for a really crazy contrast because you have this dark tone mixed with these very colorful images that you're seeing on the screen. The film has a nightmarish abstract tone, and in this case I think it works. The plot in this film is more of a suggestion rather than like a cohesive storyline. This film is more about the terror and tone created from its sounds and visuals. And usually when you have a movie like this that's kind of slow and leads up to a big build-up, I like for it to have a lot of setup so that you have like this crazy explosion at the end. But I will say, even though this film is slow, which we'll get to that in the bad section, when something does happen, it pops. There's even a silly line or two in this film, which is made even more sillier just because there's not an abundance of it in the movie. When something does happen, it really catches you in this film, and I gotta hand it to Dario Argento for that. Iconic shots at the beginning and end of this film. This film is referenced a lot in pop culture. You'll see it in The Office, Juno, Scream 4 even. I can't find any of those clips online, but the one that I remember, because I just watched Scream 4 recently, is it's briefly mentioned in the movie towards the end of the film. There you go, you're welcome. Moving on to Suspiria 2018, Tilda Swinton plays 3 different characters incredibly. Swinton plays the company's lead choreographer and a male psychotherapist involved in the academy. I guess she also plays a detective in one of the other scenes, but I didn't notice it. The therapist, I did notice there was something off about him, then I looked it up and I'm like, oh my god, that's Tilda Swinton. That's impressive, I'll tell you what. Those girls can really dance. One thing that we didn't really see in the original is the girls actually dancing and performing. Like, sure, there's a few shots of it here and there, but this 2018 film actually really focuses on that. Surprisingly, I was really captivated by the dance scene. The performance scene in this movie is so artistically violent, I kinda love it. We don't really get a lot of that in the Argento film, where it's kinda like, yeah, like, you know, they dance, but we don't really see them actually perform like in the 2018 film. And one of my favorite scenes in the movie is when Tilda Swinton's character asks Dakota Johnson's character, I'm terrible with names as you can see, to do the lead for the dance that they're going to be performing. She goes to do it, and then she puts some kind of spell on her or something, and then she starts like kicking this other girl's ass in another room. It's kind of hard to explain if you've never seen the movie. Drastically different from the original. I'll say the tone is pretty much there, but this film actually does have a little more of a cohesive plot going through it, where the Dario Argento one, like I said, it's more of a suggestion. And I don't know how I'd be able to sit through an almost 3-hour movie without a plotline. Now let's get into the burn. For Suspiria 1977, this movie is just slow at points. I respect Dario Argento's style. He's so unbelievably different from everybody else, but God, his movies are just so slow at points, man. Suspiria really dips after that beginning scene for a bit. I know a lot of people love this classic horror film, but it's honestly kind of a chore to watch if you're not in the mood for it. Don't get me wrong, I'm all about the slow burn, but when your plot's not really there and you're kind of just going off of like cool images and stuff, it gets a little lackluster. But I will say I could listen to that Goblin soundtrack all day long. That is a unbelievably unique score. And I can't believe I don't see it on like top 10 horror movie scores. I would definitely put it in my top 10, I'll tell you what. Also, I don't really like that the plot is kind of a suggestion. You have great visuals, great sound, and pretty great characters all around in the original film. I just wish there was a little more going on in the plot though. The 2018 film tries to fix that, and let's just say I don't think it really did it that well. So let's move on to it. For Suspiria 2018, this is unbelievably slow. I thought the Argento film was slow, but then I watched this, which almost doubles the runtime of the original. And God, there is so much unnecessary stuff in this remake. It tries to add more plot points, but just fails at it. Tilda Swinton's therapist character has this whole backstory about how his wife was captured in World War II and unfortunately taken to a concentration camp. Where I think that could work in another movie, it just doesn't really fit in this one. In my opinion, you could have completely cut that out of the movie and it would have made sense. But like I said, I commend Tilda Swinton for having played 3 different roles in this movie and all of them being extraordinarily different from each other. You can tell she's a very talented actor, especially to be able to play the opposite sex so well. Unnecessarily vulgar. I can't believe I'm complaining about this, but this film just goes to the extremes with the vulgarity, and it's like, it's to the point where it's unnecessary. They throw around the C word a whole bunch. Obviously I can't say that here. That's how you go to demonetization city. But like one of the first lines of this movie is one of the girls from the academy, and she's like, she uses that word in a sentence, and I'm not gonna try and repeat it because once again, don't want to get demonetized. And this movie isn't heightened enough to go that route at random places. There's also another line about like having sex with animals. Dakota Johnson's character talks about like what dancing feels like to her, and she says it feels like I'm having sex with animals, and it's like, what? You've been this like nice straight A student kind of person this whole film, and now you're talking about screwing animals? Like what? She is a dynamic character. She does go through this like change throughout the movie, but she's not there yet. She's like, this is at the beginning of the movie. She starts talking about screwing animals. It was just like, what? It was so like out of place. The CGI blood looks horrendous. Yeah, I always complain about CGI. I mean, in some movies it looks good, but God, the CGI blood at the end of this movie is horrible. I mean, it's actually really bad. It's like they put all of their budget into like the first 3/4 of this movie, and then the very end scene, which is like supposed to be like the big build-up. Like this whole movie is set up towards this like last crazy scene, which is basically just a blood orgy, and it looks terrible. Like this is supposed to be the craziest scene, the big explosion finale in your slow burner, and it looks horrible. I just feel like this movie missed the mark on trying to do something different with Dario Argento's movie. Could have been great, but I think because of the production problems, it just didn't come out the right way. I'm not gonna put this as a negative, but it also had like a really low budget for everything that it tried to do. 20 million is not enough to make an almost 3-hour long movie, especially when you have this whole historical side plot that's supposed to take place a little bit in World War II. If you would have thrown like another 10 million at this movie, bet it would have came out the right way. You would have had a lot more practical effects. Maybe that side plot would have made a lot more sense to have in this film. It really just felt like a mess. So am I giving out the ugly award? I don't want to give it to the 2018 film, but that movie kind of sucked, man. It has its moments though, like I said, like it's slow, but there's some really explosive moments here and there. And Tilda Swinton was absolutely incredible in that movie. She does not get enough credit for it. I just wish everything else going on in that movie was better. So the clear winner here is the original, the Dario Argento film. It's a classic film that, like I said, inspires a lot of pop culture. It was one of the first horror movies to be like really colorful instead of having gray tones. Horror movies really hadn't ventured into that area yet. And now you kind of see that colorful contrast in films like, for example, Midsummer is a good example. Also, speaking of films that this movie inspired, let's talk about The Witch for a second. Robert Eggers took a lot from this film to make The Witch, which is something I never realized until I watched it again this week. If you think about it, The Witch has a really explosive beginning, just like Suspiria, and then there's like this long setup and then another explosion at the end. So it's not exactly the same, but both movies have to do with witches and kind of follow a similar structure. So for those of you who really liked the 2018 remake, I've seen a lot of people who actually really did like it. Tell me about it in the comments below. I'm not hating on it, I'm just saying I think that the original is better. I like that the 2018 movie was different, I'll tell you what, it had a lot of great points to it. Leave me something about it in the comments below. Thank you guys so much for watching my remake versus original of Suspiria. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more horror content. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at KillJoyJake1 and on Instagram at KillJoy_Jake. And as always, don't forget to kill it out there, y'all.